Welcome back to another episode of Unscripted, the go-to podcast for those flipping the script and taking the unexpected path. I'm your host, Jessica Bergio, holistic life and business coach, author, speaker, and self-proclaimed high-energy hype girl. Each week, I'm bringing you inside. No gatekeeping here. I'll touch on proven holistic business strategies, powerful mindset shifts that have led my clients through massive transformations, and no BS conversation with industry leaders designed to help you get out of your own way to actively pursue a life of purpose. If you're ready to ditch the limitations at the door, hit follow and get ready to be activated to step boldly towards your big goals. Now let's dive in. Guys, I just wanted to pop in real quick before we jump into today's episode and share with you why I'm obsessed with Glossy, the brand new skincare routine that you can drink, from my good friend Lori Harder. She has honestly created a product I can't live without. Let's be honest, our time is too precious for a 10-step skincare routine, let alone knowing what different vitamins you should be taking every morning. Well, the good news is Glossy can be your go-to wellness solution. This is not your average beauty product. It's a skin and gut superfood designed to work its magic from the inside out. The result? A lighter, more glowing you, ready to conquer each day with newfound energy and confidence. I've really noticed my skin is glowing and my gut feels better than ever. The probiotic that was created for this product has been run through over 30 clinical studies. The hyaluronic acid increases hydration, making your skin look and feel smoother and plumper. And we all know zinc supports our healthy immune system. Vitamin C helps to boost your body's production of collagen, while prickly pear and coconut water powder help support your hydration levels. And then my favorite, which is magnesium, helps support our metabolism, bone health, and keeps us regular, while helping to maintain reduced levels of stress. Pretty much a perfect product, in my opinion. I have a big discount for any new subscribers. Just click the link in the show notes below and grab your first order of Glossy today. And for a limited time, screenshot your receipt and send it to me in a DM on Instagram, and I will enter you into my Glossy giveaway. Now let's jump back into the episode. Welcome back to Unscripted, the podcast. It's your girl, Jess Bergio, with a fellow creative in many ways. We have a lot of things in common. Our guest today is someone who I've admired for quite some time. I've seen her do a lot of big things in our industry and in pivoting. I'm going to let her share a little bit of that with you, but it's so cool when you get to connect with somebody who's kind of walked in your shoes. So if you are one of my original community members on this podcast, if you are in the beauty industry, or you have a background in the beauty industry, or if you're someone who is even interested in pivoting, we're going to dive into some social media stuff, some things we feel are like the go-tos, some myths we might be busting. We're going to have some conversations around tactics and things we think you should maybe or shouldn't do. So I know you're going to love this episode. Welcome to the show, girl. How are you?
I am so good. Thank you for that fabulous intro. I love what you're doing too, and I'm just so excited to be here. I just finished listening to a few of your episodes, and I am obsessed with this podcast, so I cannot wait to chat with you and to be here. Thank you.
Seriously, Jodie, you're such a amazing person to follow, because your energy when you show up on social media is just, you're on. I feel like in the industry, there are people that I can just kind of see from afar, and I'm like, she just gets it. Like when you know how to turn the camera on and you can present yourself well and you just show up and you're doing the work. I don't know if you ever found that to be true in the salon, of like you'd meet somebody, let's say they were new, and you're like, she has the it factor. She's going to bring it. Whether her technical skills are actually up to par or whatever we want to say, there's just something about the way someone carries themselves, their energy, the vibe they bring into a room, and kind of just like how they show up, that I think really sets the tone for how they're going to be in the industry and how successful they're going to be. And I think I've watched you grow so much over the last couple of years. I'd love to share your backstory with the listeners. So let's dive in. I know you're doing something completely different than what you used to do. So I'll let you intro where you're at and like what your story is, because it's been a while. It's been a journey to get here, and I've loved watching a lot of it.
Oh, thank you. And I completely understand what you're saying about when you see someone and you're just like, they have that thing. And I think that thing that it's hard to even name it, but that is one of those skills that transcends industries. And it really does. A lot of the people who I see have super successful pivots were really gung-ho when they got into the beauty industry or whatever industry they were in. So I'll make this as fast as possible, but I have two major kind of pivot points in my career that have led me to where I am now. So I was working as an independent hairstylist for years. I actually was in the industry for over 15 years when I stepped away in 2020. And what led to that was actually, I had started for a long time enjoying, I know there's lots of mixed feelings, but the social media era for business owners, for hairstylists, for independents. And it was something that I just felt so called to. So I became obsessed behind the chair with rebuilding and building my business. I went independent and I started to enjoy the marketing side of it more than the hair. And that had been the case for quite a while. And then I got invited to this class out of nowhere. This is very much one of those, I don't know what everyone's beliefs are, but that one of those like moments where you're like, this was meant to happen. And that is exactly how I felt, where I was invited to a class from someone whose online course I had taken. And she was like, come meet me in person. This will be awesome. I'll comp your ticket. Just come to this class. And I'm like, done. I'll be there. So I go to this class and it was great. But at the end, this is when the pivotal moment happened. Someone asked a question about social media. And I can't even remember what the question was. All I remember is that as the host of this class was about to say, I don't really teach social media, it was like while she was saying that, the rest of the room in slow motion erupted with all of these other hairstylists talking about how much they hated Instagram and how much they hated social media and they resented having to show up. They resented that it was so hard. It was like this whole new thing they had to do. And I sat there and I just like, it was almost like sparks started like flying. And I was like, okay, not everyone knows what I know. And that was the first realization I had. So when the world shut down 2 weeks later, I actually was like, you know what? I have a bigger purpose here. Like I can help my industry in a whole other way. And that is through teaching stylists how to market themselves, how to build clienteles. Because over my career, I'm sure every single person, regardless of career, can relate to this. I had so many times when I was employed where I felt like I was having to make impossible choices, like between my family and my work. And I felt pulled in different directions. And I just craved freedom, yes, but more so autonomy. Like to me, freedom isn't not having to work. Freedom's not like not having to put something out there. It's the right to make my own decisions. And so I really had that realization that was my purpose and that was my calling. And so I stepped away. I let the person I was renting my booth from know that I was not going to be coming back. I let all my clients know. And I invested $5,000 in a mastermind before I made a cent online. And I just went all in and I just did it. And that's how I switched into educating stylists at first. And then fast forward, I'd created group coaching programs. It was doing really well. I was doing a lot of like guest speaking. I'd started the podcast. I was all in all the way because I knew that one thing I had was time, right? I didn't have any money. I'd already made this huge investment. So I just started doing coaching calls with people that I knew and helping them get results. I started working as a social media manager for some brands in the industry to learn and make sure that what I knew wasn't a fluke, make sure it was repeatable, what had worked for me. During that time, my peers started approaching me. So other educators in the industry were like, hey, do you know anyone who does this? And I was like, I do that. And then they were asking me like, how did you do this thing? How did you set up your launch? Like, how is your content getting such great engagement? How did you do this thing? Like, how are you getting all these speaking opportunities? And so I started working with other educators really early on because I am like a projector in human design. I'm very much someone who loves to just share and help people elevate. And so eventually what led to the pivot to what I'm doing now is I am just one person. And it was just getting too much having to serve two completely different audiences. And so I decided that instead of having hairstylist specific education and then educator specific courses, that I was going to really just elevate my marketing education, go beyond the basics. There's so many incredible people helping hairstylists use Instagram. And so do I work with stylists still? Yes. Do I work with educators and online business owners and coaches more? Also, yes. I do think that there's so much, again, the freedom, the autonomy, it drives me. And I'm like, I can have a bigger impact on my industry by helping the incredible independent educators get their message out there, become icons in the industry, and become known.
So good. Oh my gosh. Yeah. And I think it's hard to, anyways, it was for me to not like niche down enough to where you're only speaking to one group. But when you're creating content, it sure makes it a whole heck of a lot easier when you know you're specifically creating products or services or even straight up content on social and any other platform that you use for one specific audience, meaning like the educator versus just the behind the chair stylist. So talk us through, I know you wanted to take things to the next level. And did that feel like it was the next level when you were speaking solely to the educator who you knew you could help become like an iconic educator? Because that is a big deal. A lot of people want to get into education, but they feel like anything else, it's oversaturated. I don't know how to stand out. What's going to make my shit pop off more than someone else's? And once you probably saw some results with some of your educators, you're like, this is a game changer for them and their business. And if they have a decent following, you can help them make so much more money and be seen by so many more people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of it came from just seeing what a gap there was, right? And there's a lot of people, and there's a couple different scenarios where this happens where I've seen it. So one is people who became like influencers in their industry, right? And then they're like, I don't want to just be making money from brands anymore. I also want to be creating my own stuff. And then also like brand educators, of course, like similar kind of thing. And then there are people who, like me, just realized that they were really, really good at something and they could help people and they were helping people and then just decided to go all in on that. And I think the thing was, for me at least, that marketing is such an ever-changing industry. The biggest reason for me to pivot was because there are some things that apply across the board, of course, but there are slightly different tactics and strategies needed to market a local business versus a more global business where you can help anyone that's working anywhere. And so that was my major reason actually for pivoting, because I'm such a practitioner. I want to teach something that I can answer any question that comes my way. And so that was the major reason for the pivot, actually, was me being able to really go 10 levels deep on that one thing. And that one thing was cool because I had done it for my own business. And it's so hard to audit your own messaging. It is so hard to step outside. I got a message this morning actually from an educator who's like, since we did the sales page audit and since we updated this, like her conversion rate from her mini offer to her education is something like 50%. Like it's really insane. And it was just messaging. All of my clients are geniuses and they already have all of these pieces that they have and they're so good at what they do. But often people are like, I just want to do what I do and I don't want to sell it. Meanwhile, not realizing that not marketing, not learning how to market your stuff is actually such a massive disservice to the people that could benefit from your work. Like we have to get this in front of people. And that is a huge driver for me because I see the impact that this work makes.
Yeah, so true. I talked a tiny bit about this on one of my stories this morning, talking about the fact that the marketing piece is what a lot of people are avoiding. They might have like a really great product or service and be able to provide a solution to so many people, but they're not willing to put themselves out there. And I was referring to the power of having a podcast and creating visibility that you exist and putting you in the position of thought leader or expert because you have a platform where you're sharing your thoughts, your perspectives, and all of that. What drew you to the podcast space? I'm curious too, because you did start your podcast a while ago and then the draw to it, but then also how have you pivoted the podcast? Because I think that is one of the biggest things that holds people back from starting one.
So I went actually against the advice of my first ever mentor and I started my podcast. I was drawn to it because I had listened to so many podcasts and gotten so much out of it. So when I went back to work after maternity leave, I had moved out to a small town. I had like a 40-minute commute every day. And that was also, I left this part out of the story, but I started back at a salon with no walk-in traffic, no clientele. I hadn't lived in the city in 5 years. And it was like, I had a new daycare bill, right? So I was like, I gotta figure this out. And so I used my commute to listen to podcasts. And this is before there even was a hairstylist specific podcast to my knowledge. So I was listening to Amy Porterfield, Online Marketing Made Easy. I was listening to Gold Digger. I was listening to Being Boss, like all of these marketing, entrepreneurship centric podcasts. And then I was translating that to, okay, how can I use this? How can I use this knowledge to grow my business, to attract clients and to do that? So truly what drew me to the podcast space was the fact that I had learned so much from them. And then there was also a strategic element as well, because I knew, and this is something I actually attribute a lot of my success to, is I knew that getting in the room with people was going to be a huge factor breaking into an industry as a previously unknown. And so being able to invite people on your show, being able to grow that side of things and grow relationships led to a lot of other opportunities because they get to meet you and they get to build that trust with you and see you're a real person. And with the reciprocity, they know that you know what you're doing, right? That opened a lot of doors as well. So that was the twofold reasoning. And I feel like there's just things that you can't give the nuance to on social media. There's some things I don't talk about on social media that I only talk about on my podcast because I can give the full. I'm not here to create just like clickbait nonsense and get views for no reason. You know what I mean? So I think that having that platform was massive. And so with the pivot, it evolved because of my evolution, essentially. And I had grown Hairstylist Rising to over 10,000 monthly downloads. Like it was a very, it was a big show. Like all my guests that would come on, big for a niche space at least, right? And so like my guests come on and be like, I love coming on your podcast. I always get clients, like that kind of thing. So it was a really big decision for me to start over. And I do still have like periodic episodes that come out on that show that I think are good for both audiences. But starting the Visionary Rising and starting over from scratch after hundreds of episodes and 3+ years was a big decision, but it just felt like, you know what? I am evolving. I have changed. And these things need to reflect. Even if it takes a little longer to rebuild, I'm okay with that.
Totally. And let's talk about that because I think there's been some question around people being scared to start their podcast because they feel like they need to know what the next 10 years of their life is going to look like in order to stick to a niche topic or content, brand pillars and all the things. And you and I both have pivoted our podcast from beauty industry specific to now including more people, not including where we grew up in the industry we love that raised us, but I wanted to include more people who probably had similar issues and problems and could speak on a higher level to come along with me on the journey, not just of where I was and just like you, very similar. But that leads me to, let's just say your social media platforms. A lot of people have had accounts for many years and have grown these numbers thinking, I have 10,000, 100,000 followers. We'll even say you're new, maybe you have 500 or 5,000, but maybe you grew the account when you were doing something different or the content was speaking to a different audience. And now it doesn't translate into maybe what you're doing. What is your process or framework around people who are maybe not seeing the data converting because of an old account or something? I know we were talking before we hit record about just like the vanity metrics and creating content that's maybe going viral, but it's not converting to paying clients. You had some good insight on a couple different things. And I would love to just like tap into that because I know so many people feel like that room full of hairdressers when it comes to social media. I don't mind doing the business that I do. I, in fact, love it. I love my client work, but social media is really a chore for me. And I want to be able to enjoy it more and know that I'm doing it right.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. And yeah, I think if you have struggled with social media, please understand it is not your fault. We are bombarded with opposing information day after day. And honestly, it's no wonder people are confused. It really is no wonder, right? Even Instagram itself is posting conflicting information and then deleting it. So if you have felt like, oh, I resent this, I get you. I totally understand. And I think that truly the biggest thing is two things, actually. One of the things is removing any of your self-worth from your metrics on Instagram because they're really, not only are they not relevant for who you are and the impact you're here to make, but truly a lot of the time we want to optimize. Obviously, we want to get the most reach we can, but I've seen people care too much about analytics and lose themselves and lose their voice and truly not even grow their accounts by tens of thousands of followers and not be able to sell a single ticket to an event. There's that story about the influencer with 3 million followers who couldn't sell a $30 t-shirt because she had not built any sort of relationship with her community along the way. So there is a lot more to it than the metrics. And like I said before, like my job is social media and creative marketing. So content, copy, all of that kind of stuff. And so of course, the goal ultimately is to increase the metrics, right? The goal is to get them there. However, what we need to focus on first is the foundations and the stuff that doesn't change, right? So what do you want to be known for? I actually have an entire private podcast episode series about this, but I'm going to give you like the cliff notes. But if you want to listen to that, send me a DM. It's a free like private podcast series that walks you through auditing your own content because I think that is the most important thing. So what do you want to be known for? And when you look at your content, is that obvious? Because a lot of the time it's not. And it sounds so easy, but what can happen is if you're like, I want to be known for being the go-to for empowerment. However, my morning smoothie always gets the most engagement. So now I'm going to start just posting every smoothie I make every morning and not posting about empowerment because it's not getting engagement. And so before you know it, now you're the smoothie girl and you're like, how did I get here? This is not what I want. Now I want to speak on empowerment. No one will hire me because that's not what I talk about. So that's a very broad example, but you want to make sure that you're balancing that visibility content. And it's possible to do that while still making sure that you're hitting the right notes and that you're meeting your audience where they're at. Because often too, this will be something that I see is like, people will outsource social media to like their VA or something like that, right? I am not against outsourcing. Like I own a marketing agency. We do content, people outsource and it works out great. The problem is when people outsource before they've gotten clear on their brand or they're not working with someone who will prioritize getting clear on their brand first. And I think it's same thing when I say outsourcing, you could also replace this with like ChatGPT, for example. If you can use it as a tool to increase your efficiency, then okay. But please don't use it to think for you or to build your brand because it's not going to do it. If you want to position yourself as a thought leader, you can't outsource thinking and you have to like really get clear on what you want to be known for, your brand, your story, all of these things that nobody but you can do. And ironically, those are the things that don't change. So there's so much of a distraction with what's the new platform or what's this new thing. And you can master any of those platforms and you can learn how to go viral. But if you don't have the actual foundations of what you want to be known for, who you are and how you serve, you're not going to make any money or be able to make any impact, right?
So what do you say then? Because, I guarantee people have been guilty of this. It's easier for me to show up on the things that don't really move the needle. Let's say your smoothie or your workouts. And I remember I had a coach a long time ago who was like, if you're not selling workout programs and you're not going to be in the health and fitness space anymore, stop showing the behind the scenes at the gym. You don't even really need to talk about the workout. You can make a mention that you went to the gym today, but if your content is screaming, I'm a personal trainer still, and you're not going to get clients knowing that you're wanting to move into the coaching space or whatever in regards to what I was doing a few years ago. And I remember thinking that's the easy stuff for me to post. And I talked this morning about being a beginner and feeling like we don't know what we're doing in the beginning. And it could be in the form of a podcast as to why people haven't started one yet or why they don't feel comfortable talking on social media. And I'm like, it's because you're not used to it yet. I don't know about you, but when I graduated beauty school, I could barely cut a straight line. So it took cutting my knuckles and messing people's hair up and getting it wrong a lot of times before I got good at what I did. And you don't get to be 20 years into a career, 15 years into a career without putting your reps in. I talk a ton about being a beginner and then being okay with not being perfect. And people want to see that journey. They want to go with you on this journey. I think that's the cool thing about platforms like podcasting and social media, that we have to get out of our own way. And you mentioned, your self-worth being tied to stuff. People know you're human. They know that you're not perfect and they want to see the work you've put in that gives you the credit and the street cred to now do the things you say you're doing. So I think
Yes.
taking people along the journey is just as important as showing this finished, perfect, polished product or having these like perfect videos. And I struggled too in the beginning stepping into the online space because I wasn't interested in doing things like social media. I wanted to create the content, but I was told, yeah, shop it out, hire out, but it
Yeah.
didn't convert because those people can't think for me. And you nailed it when you said that. And though I would get quality posts, they weren't converting because they weren't me. There was no community attached to them. So
Yeah.
it wasn't like they were equating to new clients or it was just new followers and new likes and comments, but that didn't mean shit. And so if you are utilizing social media to grow your pocketbook just as much as you're looking to grow your leadership and your impact, you have to know that what you're putting out is quality and that the right people are finding it. And so, you did mention to people not worrying about the metrics and whatnot, but how can we measure what's working and what's not working when it comes to like actually selling tickets or being able to sell a sweatshirt like that girl who had 3 million followers couldn't even sell a shirt?
I think it all comes back to that, like what you want to be known for. And are you creating content that supports that? And are you, because here's the thing, there's such a, yes, relatability is important. However, so is showcasing that you are the person who can lead someone out of it. Like you want to make sure that you're balancing relatability with expertise because essentially, if you're just being relatable, then people are like, oh yeah, I agree. I feel that way too. And they might really be warming to you and you might build that community. You might build the like relationship. However, when it comes time to solve the problem, they're looking elsewhere because while they love that they can relate to you, they don't necessarily trust you to lead them out of it. So I think that's really important and something that's really been missing from that personal branding conversation and something that I go through my clients with a lot, like is authority. Are you still building authority? Because you don't have to show up in an inauthentic way to do that. It's more about just showcasing your knowledge in a really real way. That's what's not working so much anymore is 3 ways to boost your engagement. That's something that I could have posted probably 3 years ago and it would have popped off. I could never post that today, right? And it wouldn't go deep enough for my current audience either. So basically what we want to do is we want to make sure that not only did our audiences feel like, hey, I understand you, I've been where you are, and also I can help lead you out of that. And here's like the other side of it. Here's what it looks like when you worked through this thing. So there's that relatability, but there's also that safety and that trust and that knowledge that they can rely on you to help them solve the problem, not just commiserate with them.
Yeah, no, that's so key because I do think that's a missing piece of the conversation, like you said. And I think when you're newer and you feel like maybe you aren't a quote unquote authority or some unjustified expert yet, you can fall into that relatability like, hey, girl, I understand what's going on. And I think I've been guilty of this many times by not voicing how I can solve people's problems. I think you just assume people know because you can help them. But if you're not talking about it all the time, if you're not sharing the exact ways that you can take it from A to B or A to Z, they don't know. And I think it's in that repetitive, what do you want to be known for? You have to talk about that religiously to position yourself as an authority. And you don't have to be some, I've done this for 20 years expert or authority. You can be like, my transformation was this. This is how I help myself do it. I was you about 5 years ago, 5 minutes ago, but now I'm here and I can help you get over here too. And so then people have a really clear understanding of what specifically to ask you for help and where they fit into the equation, because we don't want just any clients. We want clients that we know need the thing that we have. And so the more specific, like you're saying, actually the better.
Yep, 100%. And I think that there's a lot of people who are like, this might not be a popular thing to say, but if you were really struggling with this and you truly don't think like I can help someone with this, then ethically, I would maybe look at something else, right? Because we got to stop making excuses at some point and be really honest with ourselves. And if you are not willing to share what you can do, you're holding yourself back and you're holding the people that you can help back. And I think it's really important to own that. And if this is a confidence issue, that is the work that needs to be done. And don't expect to be confident at something in the very beginning. If this is I'm not genuinely sure I can help people with this issue, then I'd go back to the drawing board because that is like the base we need in order to market ethically, I think.
100%. I agree. Yeah. And there's plenty of courses and programs and mentors that you can get in order to get you to a place where you feel really comfortable in what you're sharing, and then the confidence piece of just putting the reps in for sure.
Yes.
I've got my heart on retreats, and I know you saw we just had the unscripted mastermind retreat in Scottsdale just a few weeks back, and you just had the honor of taking a bunch of educators on a retreat to Europe. Tell me about that. How was that? How did you come up with the concept, and how was it?
Oh my goodness, it was amazing. So yeah, we just finished our second Escape to Elevate retreat in Spain. So we also hosted one last October in Italy, and we're going next October. If you're like, hell yes, I need to go to Italy and work on my brand, definitely check it out at escapetoelevate.com. But we basically, here's how the idea came about. I have, like I said before, I have a marketing agency called Align Creative Co. And we work predominantly with educators and in the beauty industry and outside of the beauty industry on their content. Collaborative process, like we create a lot of it for them. It's very much like, I call it like method creation, like method acting. So we really do get inside people's heads. And it is really something that I'm very proud of. Like, people who know them think they're still creating their own content, which is so cool, and it gets epic results. However, I took a trip that was absolutely life-changing in October of 2022. And there was a day where my son and my husband, this was my first time since starting my business where I actually took a full 2 weeks off of work. So I'd taken downtime before, but I hadn't unplugged for 2 weeks, which I was able to do thanks to my incredible team. So I was sitting outside with my journal, reading The Big Leap at Lake Garda. And I was sitting on just like looking out of the lake. Everything was so peaceful. My husband and my son had gone fishing. And I just started having probably the biggest downloads I'd had in 2 years prior, like all at once. And I was like writing pages and pages of notes of all of these things, all these brand pivots. This is when I made the decision to pivot my business. And I really just felt so inspired and so motivated. And I had clarity on things that I've been ruminating over for months and probably even a year. And so it was an incredible trip. I got home. I was talking to a lot of my friends, peers, clients, and they had seen the change like in me and just how inspired and motivated I was. And then I actually started looking for a retreat to go to because I was like, oh, I enjoyed that so much. Like I need to find a retreat. But I had a very specific idea in mind of what I wanted this retreat to be. Like I wanted it to be at a beautiful like place in Europe because that's just my vibe. That's just where I love to hang out the most. I wanted to have like my own private room and I wanted it to be in a beautiful location. I wanted there to be incredible food and I wanted something tangible because I met a lot of people, a lot of my clients invest in retreats and all that kind of stuff. And they come back and they're really lit up for like a day and then nothing changes. A lot of the time, nothing changes. So I was like, okay, here's what I want to do. I want to create something in my zone of genius where there is a literal, tangible transformation. And so that is where Escape to Elevate came from. It is a branding and marketing retreat. So basically, we do an 8-week mastermind prior where we go through your offer suite, all of the things that you offer, what you want to be known for, your vision, your impact. We have an incredible guest speaker come in and teach digital storytelling. And really, they get everything they need so that when we get to Italy, when we touch down, not only do they get to go to Rome, not only do they get to go to Treviano Romano and go to these beautiful like lakeside Italian towns, they also get things done. So we have workshops where because they've stepped outside, they're mapping out their marketing. We are creating a ton of video content. They are getting custom brand shoots from my brand photographer and business partner. So it really was designed to be like an all-encompassing experience where you can get out of your day-to-day and actually not just think about and get inspired about, but create the things that are going to move the needle long-term.
So fun. Sounds epic. Oh my gosh, it looked epic. And I knew a lot of the girls that you had there and just watching them in their element, just flaunting around, doing different things, and then the shoots and the photos and everything. There's nothing like coming home with some tangible takeaway stuff. And we definitely made that a huge part of the unscripted mastermind retreat because I, like a lot of other people and yourself, would come home motivated, inspired, but I didn't have anything and there was no real thought around the content shoot or the branding. And that's why we go and we do things a lot of times is so we can have these beautiful photos and That's what a lot of
Yes.
times we see on social media. We aspire to be living the lifestyle someone's living, or that's what attracts us to somebody, is like how they live their life and how they're showing up. And visual art is a big part of what draws people in. Do they see themselves in your story? Do they feel compelled to the same things you are? It's like that like attracts like. So being authentic and being able to be an authority in a space where people like really get to see you and know you, I think is key. And so hiding behind social media and not allowing yourself to escape and get these beautiful photos. And when you do book photo shoots, not knowing what the photos are for, I don't think this lady will maybe ever listen to my podcast, but she just did a photo shoot that I went and did hair and makeup for. And I'm like, oh, what are these photos for? And she's like, oh, my website. But I went on her social media, there's no pictures and there was no real thought process behind it. And I thought, is she just doing a photo shoot to do a photo shoot? Those are fun too. But also when you're creating content, having a vision and clarity around what the photos are for, where you need them, helps you get the shots that you need. So you walk away from investments like a photo shoot with what you need. And I think intentionality around that is really the whole point of what we're talking about too, is like intentionality around social media, intentionality around what content you're showing and showcasing on your platforms, so that people understand when they land on your page in the 3 seconds, if they're brand new, is this person for me or not? Can I learn from them? Do I want to be in their world? Do I want to listen to their podcast? Do I want to buy something from them? It's really important. And so I think aside from the cool ways and the tactics that you teach your clients, there are a lot of simple things that she shared with us today that can get you out of your own way of not just posting to post, but to post things that are actually going to land with the right people. Because I share with my clients all the time, like you can go viral on a post or something, but if those aren't your ideal clients, you're not going to convert to anything. And it goes true with podcasting too. As I talk about podcasting a ton, but people are like, oh, what am I even doing this for? I'm only getting 20 or 50 or 100 downloads per episode. And I'm like, could you even take on 20 new clients right now? I'm like, that's 20 people that committed to listening to your podcast and gave up an hour of their day to be a part of your world.
Yeah, a podcast listener and a social media follower are not the same metric. We cannot compare the two against each other because it is not the same. I know people who have 10,000 followers and like 500 podcast listeners, and their podcast converts way higher than their socials. But again, I also know a lot of people whose social converts super high. It's not necessarily about the vehicle. I feel like that's part of it. That's how you best express yourself. I also think like the foundations and the fundamentals, and yeah, someone like wanting to hear what you say so bad that they give up that half hour of their day, I think is massive. But again, that also would need to be relevant to what you help people with in order to build that ecosystem and that visibility ecosystem.
There is some podcasts that we can go listen to get some more insight on what you teach. And those are, we'll find, what can we put those in the show notes? Or if we just go to your website, they can find those?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you found this conversation interesting, I want to direct you to go get the content edit, because it's a totally free private podcast series and it is so good for just auditing. And we're not talking about the algorithm. Like it's not even a factor, because if you actually look at these things, like people are so focused on these like tactics, but it truly, the messaging and the strategy behind, we talk about clarity, authority, and presentation. So those are three really big things. Clarity on what you want to be known for. How can we create content that builds something around our actual offers or like our services or our coaching package? And then building authority in that space and showcasing your authority, and then presentation, personal branding, and how you present it. I go ridiculously deep into that on the content edit. It's jodiebrown.ca/edit. And then more general, but beyond the basic marketing, on the Visionary Rising podcast, there's some really cool episodes on there that'll make you think, like copywriting tricks, social media, visibility, like 5 ways to get more visible, all the things.
Amazing. Oh my gosh, you guys, jump off now. Totally fine. You don't finish listening and go binge listen. I think these are really key if you want to grow in the right way. I think it's one thing to grow like we talked about, and then the numbers are all fabulous for, shits and giggles. But if it's not converting and you're looking at your numbers thinking, what am I doing wrong? I'm doing all the things. Go take an audit. Go take a general audit of what you're doing. Go see if Jodie's content can help you. I know it can. She's helped hundreds of people, probably thousands at this point, get their shit together to make it feel fun. So when you know things are working, how much more excited are you going to be to show up and do the thing? When you actually have a framework to follow and you got your shit dialed in and things are converting, we're not talking about motivation anymore. We're like, this shit works, my shit's good, and we're going to go all in. You're proof you're doing the thing that you're coaching your people to do, right? You chose the thing. and you're going all in with educators and helping people take things to the next level. So, I mean, you're walking the walk, not just talking the talk.
Thank you so much for that. And I definitely feel like you do the exact same thing. I think it's such a cool, one of the reasons that I really love your socials, I feel like you do showcase what you teach as well. And I think it's really cool. And I realized that I never actually answered one of your questions. So I just want to do that real quick. So here's what I would say when it comes to metrics, because again, I've said this before, but we do want to optimize, right? So once you are clear on the messaging and like what you want to be known for, your story, your personal brand, all of that kind of stuff, then the secondary goal becomes, okay, how can we now optimize this and get it in front of as many people as possible? And then also, one of the really cool things we get to do is measure what is resonating. So once you get that, it's like a two-phase approach, right? So we don't want to start going viral before we have the foundations, but we also don't just want to stay there and never try to evolve, right? So it's really important to think about the phases. So foundation step 1, tactic step 2, because then once you kind of layer that on, then if there's a topic that always gets really big engagement for you, always gets a lot of conversation going, maybe that's an indication that your audience wants that thing from you, right? I have a client who she was posting about her business model and we had created, she's one of my agency clients, we create the content and we were posting about like her specific salon suite business model and people were going crazy over it. And it was just really exciting to people. She ended up thinking, okay, you know what? I'm going to create a course about how I did this. And she had a 5-figure launch the first time she launched it. She then had a second 5-figure launch the second time she launched it. And this was like when she was on maternity leave. So they were not crazy hardcore launches. It was just using the data from her connection with her community to guide her decisions. So once you have a strategy that you implement, then you can start looking at the metrics and looking at the data to actually guide your moves.
Yeah. Oh, so smart. So good. And that's the thing. Sometimes you think the things you know or the way you're doing something is just what everybody else knows. But if it's something like you were talking about earlier, if you know something really well inside and out and you know you can help somebody with something, it may be the thing that's just like the low-hanging fruit that you can really dial in and create like either a serious leg of your business or diversify your income and bring in a second leg because it's just naturally what you were able to create for yourself. I think it's the coolest thing about being an online business in the online business space is the possibilities are endless. So if you are feeling overwhelmed, if you're feeling like your content's all over the place, go get the resources that Jodie has for you. Go listen to those podcast episodes, do your own edit and audit. It's easier when you start there and you go through the work first before you just go out and hire somebody. Because let's say you get on the phone with even Jodie today, she's going to make you go do all this work anyways. So it's like, go do the foundational work like she talked about before you start implementing random tactics that you're not even sure what's working. And I love that you touched on that point about if you were to go viral today, do you have the foundations in place to support maybe the clientele that would bring in, or are you still just like winging it? That is key. And it's something I find people are trying to put the cart before the horse. I'm like, build the foundations first. And then let's take things to the next level once we've got that shit dialed in. Oh my gosh, I love this. I know we could talk like marketing and angles and social media and beauty industry for decades here, but you guys go get your hands on some of these resources, do a little extra homework for yourself so that you can really refine and see what's working and what's not. It'll make it a whole lot easier to show up on social media. And we're just so grateful that there's resources like the Visionary Rising podcast and people like you who are actively helping other people like show up and be the legends that they're meant to be and create the impact. You're so amazing. It was so good to chat with you. You guys, if you love this episode, you know what to do. Go grab those free resources. And if you get a hot second, leave us a rating and review. It helps move the show up in the ranks so more people can enjoy these episodes. I love you guys so much, Jodie. You're amazing. We'll chat with you guys soon, and we'll see you on the next episode of Unscripted.
Giving back is easy. Leave Unscripted your 5-star rating and written review. I appreciate your support more than I could ever put into words.